All right, guys. Well, good evening, everyone. We're gonna go ahead and begin a work session of the Board of Trustees of Harlandale Independent School District, which is held today, Wednesday, October 16, 2024. Beginning at 6:15. It is now 6:17 PM, Central Office, PDC 102 Genevieve, San Antonio, Texas 72214. We're gonna go ahead and go for a roll call and recording of board members present, please. Appreciate everyone's patience. They're gonna set this up right now. It's those 4 days, sir.
Told you had 4 days. Oh, I ain't even bothering one.
Voting is open. All right, we can go ahead and close the vote. All right, do declare a quorum present. We do have Ms. Cavazos that will be joining us a little later, probably in the next 5-10 minutes, and we'll have her noted as she comes in. In addition to that, Dr. Casper, as we were made aware of now, she was not going to join us for tonight. So moving on to recording of superintendent staff members present, Mr. Soto.
Yes, Mr. Chair, Board of Trustees, HISD Community. This evening, we have our Assistant Superintendent for Business and Finance, Mr. Flores.
Here.
We have our Executive Director of Operations, Dr. Nojosa.
Here.
We have our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, Ms. Casey.
Here.
Filling in for Human Resources is Ms. Molina,
Here.
and our Public Information Director, Ms. Garza.
Here.
Thank you so much, sir. We're going to go ahead to item number 2, which is public comment, and we do have a speaker ready to present. So Ms. Maria Cruz Martinez, whenever you're ready, ma'am. And as you know, Ms. Maria Cruz, you can see that the timer will be up there, and obviously related to today's meeting.
Good evening, HISD leaders, faculty, staff, and community. My name is Mari Cruz Martinez, HEATSDA local president, lifelong resident, and 15-year employee of HISD. Insurance. To insure or not to insure, that is the ongoing question again. Since my first years of teaching, having insurance was a good thing in this district. It was affordable and it covered your medical expenses when things came up. That's what insurance is supposed to do. Over the years, that changed so much. Some of the explanations made sense, others not at all. For years, most of us have been paying outrageous amounts for insurance just to say we had insurance. But we cannot use it because on top of all we paid monthly, we had to pay additional amounts out of pocket to be seen or to have procedures done. So instead, many of us just went without using it because honestly, we could not afford it. But hey, we could say we had insurance. The last few years, everything changed to have self-funded, whatever you want to call it. What a mess. Many employees had a difficult time finding providers that took it, and others had to change doctors they had for decades because many doctors' offices didn't know a thing about the new insurance. It was very frustrating to say the least. 2 years ago, it seemed to start getting better for many of us. Many were really getting to know how to handle the insurance situation, and then it changed again. Now more changes as benefits is going and presenting all the information about our deductibles going from individuals $500 to $1,500 and for families from $1,000 to $3,000. People are starting to get very concerned. I am receiving emails, texts, and calls with what's going on? Here we go again. Why is the deductible so high? I thought we went to self-funded to save on that and more. Now, one question that has been asked at these presentations is why is the deductible increasing by so much? Employees are being told, I don't have an answer for that. You would think after getting this question at every presentation, the answer would change. I just came from our presentation today after school. I asked the same question and was given the same reply. We don't know the answer to that. Again, if the employees of this district are asking the same questions, wouldn't it be better to have a response? We also do not know premium amounts, and we were told we won't know those until the board passes this. So school board leaders, will you be passing something that is not fully developed with no premium amounts and has unanswered questions? I hope that you request all these questions and holes in the plan are situated before anything is accepted. We trust in you to make the best choices for the greater good. Please take care of us. Also, some are asking if it is possible to combine family member insurance contributions, not just for spouses, but also for families. Some in the past were allowed to do this with a parent or sibling. Now they are being told it's just with a spouse. Another question, why is enrollment only 10 days from October 28th to November 8th. Please have these concerns answered on our behalf before accepting. Thank you for your time and your consideration.
Thank you, ma'am. And we do have Ms. Cavazos here joining us. It's 6:22. So moving on to the next item, which is the board will conduct a work session with the superintendent and staff. Item 4, information reports, review and consider information from administration and legal counsel regarding possible district housing opportunities. Mr. Soto?
Yes, Dr. Hinojosa?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Soto. Mr. Chair, members of the board, so one of the initiatives that Mr. Soto had discussed earlier was it's in terms of like for staff, for recruitment and retention, one of those initiatives was to look at providing affordable housing for our staff, not just our teachers, but any staff member that would qualify for that. And so it's right now, part of the initiative, it's a 2-step process. And tonight, we're going to go to the first step, which is kind of an explanation of some organizational items that need to kind of be put in place prior to us being able to move forward. And then just knowing that moving forward to next month, the plan for us after we get tonight's presentation and any questions that might be asked from that is provide a follow-up meeting in November where myself and some of our staff members will go out to some local or area, not local, but area school districts who have instituted this initiative in their district to help staff. And so our plan will be to provide a follow-up with that, again, to answer any questions you may have, and then also to provide a little bit more tangible information with some school districts who have successfully implemented this initiative in their school district. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Destiny Guessing with Walsh Gallegos, who's going to provide some information for those initial steps that we need to do in order to get started.
Good evening. How is everybody? I know it's been a while since I last saw members of the board and the superintendent, so it's happy to be here tonight with y'all. This topic is a little complex, so I tried to keep the presentation a little brief for tonight just because there's a lot of ins and outs that go into this. But I just wanted to kind of give you a brief overview to see what we're kind of looking at in terms of implementing this type of initiative in the district. So we're going to talk about public facility corporations, and that's kind of the first step and ultimately what allows the school district to utilize this type of method. So I'm just going to kind of go through what it is and what legislation allows you to implement this in the district, what type of steps we're going to be looking at taking, obligations of the school district and also the developer and any other interested stakeholders. And then also, as Mr. Hinojosa outlined, there's some other school districts in the area and across Texas that have started implementing this. So I just wanted to highlight a couple for the district to reach out to get some information. So I think that the issue of housing is kind of something that's being experienced across the nation. And a lot of districts have started hearing from some of these developers on these initiatives that could also help them retain teachers. So obviously rental prices are beginning to return to pre-pandemic levels. Right now we're seeing rates that, skyrocketed and we're starting to level out. However, in some recent research, the average teacher in 2024 can afford 47.9% of apartments for rent and 14.3% of homes for sale. So again, we're seeing that kind of level out. But again, it's still so much of a crisis that we're experiencing. And also the National Education Association acknowledged that even though our wages for our teachers are increasing, it's still struggling to keep up with the housing market. So this is kind of a way for you to offset, maybe retain our teachers and also offer some incentives on top of what we already do. So the concept of a public facility corporation, it's a nonprofit corporation that assists in financing, constructing, and equipping public facilities such as an administrative office, education buildings. Sometimes they're building them from the ground up. It really just depends on a case-by-case basis. To provide affordable housing to staff and also community members. So one way that I've seen this come up on the flip side is, they would approach cities or counties who are in need of affordable housing, and they would do a lease from the city or the county, and then from there they would build, and these units, and they would base it off of salary, medium income, things like that. Here, it's a little bit different. So it became an essential tool that was adopted by the Texas legislature a couple years ago. It's under Chapter 303 of the Texas Tax Code. And what they do is they have permission to lease these revenue bonds, where school districts can then do a lease purchase agreement to finance the real estate purchases. And in this case, it's a little bit, again, different because we have pre-existing buildings. Also, the PFCs allow school districts to earn additional revenue through their ground lease. So because we technically own the land, it's an additional source of revenue for the district, in that the developer would be paying a ground lease to lease the property from you for the duration of this lease. Again, it came up under Chapter 303, and school districts are authorized as sponsors to act under this section of the code. And like I mentioned, there's other entities that can also operate, but it is legally permissible for school districts to operate under this section of the code. And the PFC, once it's created, has broad authority to finance or to provide for the acquisition, construction, building, funding of these public facilities. So again, authorized to issue the bonds for the purpose of financing, as I mentioned earlier, and we've just done some brief cites to the sections of the code, and the board has copies of this if you wanted to do some additional research. And then ultimately, the PFC would own a property that would then have to be devoted for this specific public use, and then enter into the lease for the for-profit entity to operate it. So again, that's where this ground lease comes into play. You, as the school district, would be the leaseholder. So you would lease to these developers to come in under this PFC to then operate this housing that we would eventually construct, or whatever we choose to do with the building that we currently own. Again, the 2015 Texas legislature created the 100% PFC exemption under Section 303. This is just in reference to tax exemption. And in 2023, they also substantially revised Section 303, and this was just to make it a little more clear. There was a lot of pushback on these types of arrangements for several years, just because, what did you do when one entity came in and offered this, 100% tax abatement? How did that affect the other entities that were able to collect taxes under the way that it was structured? So this was some of the pushback that they were getting. And they did take some time to kind of reconvene, look over how it was being implemented, and then they also revised it. So the development financed by a PFC has to be within the area of the operation of the sponsor. So you could no longer operate one outside of your geographic boundary. It has to be located where you're located. It also added some tenant protections because there was some pushback from those who were leasing these types of buildings. Mandatory public hearings and advance notice. A lot of this prior to this, the changes that were made in the revision, people would hear about it over the radio, but they would never see that there was a public hearing or allowed for public comment. And so again, that was a lot of the pushback, and this is what they did to reestablish that communication and be a little bit more transparent. It also had some requirements for renovations when it comes to an existing property. And that's just in relation to if the building was structurally sound, if it was structurally fit to operate as this type of housing. And then also to just implement some rent limits and auditing and monitoring requirements. What you'll see is a lot of these developers take on a number of these. And so they're operating several different ones, and they just wanted to make sure that there was internal policies in place to make sure that these were running under the code. My thing is not working with me. Okay, so this is how it works. So this is just a very brief overview. So this does take a number of meetings of the board. So it's not that we just kind of sit down today and we decide to do it. We actually have to follow a couple of steps. And so the first thing would have to be for the school district to create the PFC itself. So that would operate under the Board of Trustees. From there, we would have to find a developer, and I believe that a developer has already reached out to the district, but there are a number of other developers that kind of operate under this function. And they give you a proposal for what they intend to bring to the community or bring to this purpose. From there, they have to obtain appraisals, financing, all of this has to be backed by banks. Obviously, all of that would have to be transparently shared with the district before making a decision to move forward with this particular developer. And then in this case, they would have to take ownership of the land, but since you already own the land, you would then lease it. So in some cases, like I mentioned, there's cities or counties that don't technically own land. And so they enter into these agreements to purchase the land with the intention of then leasing them to these developers for the public housing purpose. So here, we're kind of skipping a step because for the most part, we own the land and the building on top of it. And so we would just get back into this lease into the developer. And then finally, the developer would build the quality housing and obviously would have to meet the standards of the statute. And then finally, the PFC, being the district, would then provide the tax exemption to the developer during the operation of the public housing, which would then offer the incentives to your teachers and staff for lower rent for the housing. And then there's just some affordability requirements that we've done some research on. This is from a couple that we've seen recently. They reserve certain levels or certain numbers of units for certain income medians. So what we've seen is, 10% will be held for 60% of the median family income. And that number is very fluid. So it really just depends after you've done a study within the area. You will see that this is not specifically set, but this is just what the commonality is. Finally, some of the units can be leased out for market rates. So without having that deduction in rental fees, up to 50, but it doesn't mean that there has to be 50. So if there is a greater need to have those flexible rates in the housing, then we have the ability to do that. Finally, the monthly rent on income restricted units cannot exceed 30% of the market value. And then the unit mix by bedroom count must match between affordable and market rate units. So that's another thing to take into consideration. We have some teachers who may have a family of 4, may have a family of 6, may have a family of 2. We have to think about the number of units that we're going to want to serve each specific subfamily type. And then I know I mentioned the tax exemption. So that's kind of what helps this whole thing flow. Due to the public function of the development and the fact that it's serving a public purpose to the community, the corporation is going to be exempt from taxation by the state, municipality, or the political subdivision of the state. Now you can see why there can be a conflict sometimes when it's not a school district that's operating that, right? Because we have this land, we're already tax exempt. And so really there's no tax being taken from other taxable entities. When you flip it on the flip side, sometimes in situations where you have a city or a county that are operating these, obviously the school district would still maintain its taxable value on those units. And so it's not depriving another entity of their taxable value. And then the tax exemption includes expiration periods based on the type of development. And this is where it obviously has kind of its perks to the developer, is that new construction, they receive that tax exemption for 60 years. And if it's an acquisition of an occupied development, then it's 30 years. So, that's where that comes into play, and how they can offer these lower rates is to offset the construction costs and also the taxable value. And then just a couple of our next steps would be, obviously not tonight, no pressure, but at the next meeting after, I would assume we get some more information from some of the other districts that are operating these to see if this is in the district's best interest. We would need to sit down and we would actually need to take appropriate action and pass a resolution to create the PFC itself. So that's developing a name. And then we also have to submit articles of incorporation. So it does become a formally filed PFC with the state of Texas. And then you have to have your organizational meeting where you talk about the bylaws. Those would have to be in writing, obviously, in place at all times during meetings of the PFC. And then we also have to elect officers. So, and that's just the very initial step. That's to get your PFC set up, filed, and properly run. And that's kind of the first step that we would need to do. And then from there, there's a lot of interface with the developer that would be involved. And most of that moving forward would involve them. But for the most part, this is the first step that we need to have before we even start having those conversations. And then in terms of our obligations, you would have to hold regular meetings as the PFC. We would have to talk about procurement because again, this is important as a school district operating as a PFC. We need to make sure that we are still according to our statutory requirements for procurement. Obviously, we're still governed by the Texas Open Meetings Act, but then there will be additional audits since we are operating outside of a school district as almost a housing authority. We're going to be subject to auditing from the Texas Department of Housing. And this is just a couple of examples. Some of them are larger districts operating. Obviously, we have Austin ISD. Theirs, I believe, was about 2 years ago. So this was kind of the first one that I had heard about. And then obviously Pflugerville and Round Rock kind of followed that. And then you're also seeing them out in counties that don't have that large of a taxable basis. And so smaller rural counties and school districts are also starting to utilize this section of the code to generate revenue and also teacher incentives because it is difficult to get teachers out to those areas. So I think that this is where we're going to start for the most part in terms of conducting our research to see how other school districts are operating these types of PFCs and housing developments. And we hope to have an update for y'all on that at the November meeting. I know that was a lot of information. So does anybody have any questions right now?
All right, anyone like to ask a question or have a comment, concern? Ms. Cavazos?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moreno. And this might be a very early question.
Uh-huh.
Does it require, as far as leasing to the developer, does it require a minimum number of years or a maximum number of years?
So generally, and this is kind of the fluidity of that, right? So once we enter into this with the developer, they're going to get that tax exemption for those 30 or 60 years, and they generally expect the lease to match that. Now, here's the other issue. I'm sure everybody here has leased an apartment at one time in their life, but it's very common for those companies to then sell to another company, to then sell to another company. So generally in these types of agreements, they do have an assignability clause where they want to make sure that they're protected in the event that their company does dissolve and it gets assigned to another company, that the obligations that the PFC has made to them via that lease continue on to the next person.
Thank you.
Ms. Ortiz, you have a question?
Yes, I do. Mr. Soto, have we identified a building or property, or is this, are we doing this first and then we'll identify something, or can we identify it?
Great question. We've done some preliminary studies with the architects that we do have on board at no charge to the district. Basically, the architects, engineers are saying some of the buildings that we had that we wanted to repurpose to fit this would not be suitable for a repurposed apartment complex. The cost would be too great, but we do have land. We have the 5 acres that we had set aside because we thought that subdivision was going to be for growth. As we know, we that's not come to fruition. So we do have 5 acres on the 410 area behind the most building. If we transition next year where Avance goes to Columbia Heights, we're going to have that piece of property as well up in the, so there's going to be a few options where we're going to have land to develop. As she said, that would be one avenue.
And if we did go that route, obviously with land that's not developed whatsoever, we're going to be tied to that 60-year abatement.
All right, any other comments, concerns, or clarification needed or questions?
Sure. I
Yes,
just had a
Mr.
question
Luna.
to clarify, so we're gonna be the PFC, right?
Mhm.
The district is, the board members are.
Yes.
We're not gonna be actually running
Like the day-to-day operations
Right.
of the, right. So
so it's gonna be just like we are right now.
you
Basically.
operate as you are right now effectively, right? You are a landlord, right? But not to your teachers. You're a landlord to this developer who would then construct and operate the housing development. So, you are the PFC. Obviously, you still have to hold regular board meetings to make sure that you're staying up to date with your monitoring and auditing requirements and, obviously holding the developer accountable, making sure that this is still working for your teachers and that they're not upholding, any part of the agreement that's there. But beyond that, really, you're not, for all intents and purposes, you don't have really any obligation to maintain the premises because that's going to be under their lease.
All right, thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments or concerns or clarification needed? Mr. Soto, would you like to share something? before?
Yes, trustees, Dr. Jose, our next step would be,
Our next step would be that myself and some of our staff members from the district, we're gonna look at some of these school districts and visit with them and kind of have a better understanding of what steps they took internally. As Ms. Gessing said, so the procedures that she covered, as much as they're tied to the school district, there's still some internal steps that we have to take in terms of making the transition and making those decisions that are going to be in the best interest of the district. So for us, again, myself and some of our staff members will go and have some sit-down one-on-one meetings with the individuals that were responsible for handling these operations at the school districts. So then that way we can come back and have a little bit more of a hands-on information to present to the Board of Trustees.
Now, do you know, Ms. Gessing, based off the information that's shared with us, what is the process in terms of if we wanted to proceed forward with initiating a PFC?
So what we would do, I think, after we kind of come back with some additional information, I think that it would be best for us to go into a closed session discussion just about the legal requirements. So that way we can kind of get into what those next steps would be. But in terms of an action item, we would just need to take action for the board to delegate authority to the administration to start the process, which would be obviously compiling the documents and everything needed for you to create the PFC. And then from there, when we come back to you at a later board meeting, you would take the appropriate action to create the PFC, and then we would start the filing of the articles of incorporation, and then work with the board to develop those bylaws, elect officers, and everything else. And that really is your first step.
And that whole process doesn't seem, expedited, obviously. So it's a process that can take anywhere from 6 to 12 months or anything of that nature.
So generally, I mean, that really depends on how long it takes for us to come to an agreement on whether or not we want to proceed. Once we can put together the filing for the articles of incorporation, generally the state takes about 30 to 60 days to respond to that. So you're really not looking for that, long of a timeline. But in terms of creating our bylaws, those are things that are pretty form-based, so we can put those together fairly quickly. I wouldn't anticipate us having this ready to go by the end of the year just because of the thought that needs to be given to move forward. But I think it's definitely something that we could have ready to go before the spring of next year.
Okay. And is there, based off of the research that you guys have provided and the information that you guys have compiled, is there an appetite for these type of partnerships among developers?
Definitely. And in most cases, it's actually the developers that are seeking out entities to collaborate with. So we've seen it a lot. We've seen it come up a lot primarily. I've seen it in the most of my capacity coming up with cities. I know that they have started dabbling in school districts just after that legislation was passed and refined. But for the most part, my experience has been with cities getting sought out by these developers to generate these PFCs. But again, it can expand to y'all, so it's not something that we haven't seen before.
In addition to that, I noticed, based on the information that was shared, that sometimes there's organizations that seek out, I think it was Pflugerville that issued a bond.
Mhm.
Now, I don't think that would be something that we would be looking at,
Right.
but is that something what some of these developers are also angling for, is like, hey, you guys do this and then we can work collaboratively to create this affordable housing?
Not that I've seen. Most of the time, the revenue bonds are created through statute, so those are there for their use, and it's created through the tax abatement, or tax exemption, I'm sorry. So that shouldn't come up into a question with y'all at all.
And so ultimately, how does this factor in, or I don't know, Mr. Flores or Dr. Hinojosa, how does this at the end support affordable housing for our staff, and then again, help generate revenue to support our students' learning?
So in terms of an incentive for your teachers, obviously being able to provide affordable housing, that's another incentive that you can utilize to not only have teacher retention, but also to attract educators to the area. In terms of revenue, the ground lease itself would allow you to generate revenue because they'll be paying you on a yearly basis. That's why there's those appraisals that have to be conducted, and that would all be laid and ironed out into that lease agreement. So every year there would be a proportion of that being paid to you directly. And I don't know what that number will be just because I'm not sure of the acreage and also the market in the area, but that would be already implemented within that lease. And sometimes I have seen where after so many years, the lease gets increased, the lease amount is increased or, it increases by a percentage over X many years. So those are all things that can generate revenue to the district.
And so, for example, if we were to enter an agreement and it's a new construction, that's the likelihood that we would pursue. That's, can you explain a little bit more on what the 60-year, I guess the abatement, I know there's this exemption, but is that us tied to it if we wanted to move on from it or someone wanted to purchase it from us outright? Is that not allowed?
So there's provisions within the agreement that we can work out. Now, obviously, this is where I have heartburn sometimes when it comes to these long-term leases, is just the idea that, let's say one day the district just decides that they need another campus and this land is perfect for that use. We like to build in those provisions in most of your lease agreements to allow you to terminate just for convenience because we need it. This is a little bit more difficult in that regard because you're tied to the creation of this PFC, you're tied to this ground lease. So I haven't seen a lot of flexibility to walk away, but that doesn't mean to say that we can't negotiate it. It's definitely something that other districts have been able to do. So we would just need to work that into the lease agreement to ensure that, if we are entering into this lease, that if a need does arise and we need something else on that land, that we have the ability to do that.
I guess the final piece, Mr. Soto, is just providing additional support in terms of information for the team and ultimately seeing, I know this is a relatively new process for some entities, especially ISDs, to see what the results have been and ultimately they how have they supported revenue to support our students learning and teacher retention. So I don't know if that data is readily available or we'll have to compile it on some other level.
It's definitely something that we're going to need to compile. And obviously, we want to make sure that when we bring it back to you, that we set out, okay, this is what's going on in these more rural school districts, and this is what's going on in school districts that are comparable to your size. So that way you can really see the effects. The other thing is that they're not all operating in the same way that we would. So Ector County only has a 3-year contract to manage this, established building that they have. And we're not quite sure how that one was done because that's a little bit different from what I've generally heard. But for the most part, the rest of them seem to be operating in the same function that we would have here. And so I think for our focus would be to really focus in on those 3 or 4 districts that are of comparable size to you and see if there's any data for them to report or if they can show any types of pros or cons that they've experienced in the process so far.
Do you have anyone have another question, Ms. Ortiz?
Yes, so if I heard it correctly, we've identified a potential contractor? No?
I think that someone
Or
has,
are we going to go out and allow
yes.
for an opportunity? And I'd be interested to find out who the contractors are for the ones that y'all go visit and the occupancy
Yeah.
on those things. Yeah, those occupancy rates.
The other thing that we've seen, and I just wanted to share this little tidbit, was there is one specific attorney who represents these developers. We've seen his name come up numerous times. So we kind of know what we're up against in that regard. And so it's good to know that there's one person who's continued to do these for years and years and years since this was implemented. But at the same time, there's other people that are breaking into the game from other parts of basically the country. I mean, there's companies coming in from all over, but definitely we're not just going to tie into the first one, but there are different developers working with each of these different districts. So
Thank you.
Any other comments, concerns, or clarification needed? All right. Are there any local ISDs? I know I see the Austin Round Rock area, and that seems to be significant growth. And I know there's
Yeah.
growth here in the south side of town, but not necessarily near us.
No
but-
local school districts, however, there have been several that have either been brought to or passed by the city of San Antonio. There was also one that was brought to the city of Castle Hills a couple of years ago. That one did not pass. And that was just by a vote of the city council. They decided not to move forward. So none with San Antonio area school districts, but yes, with municipalities.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any further comments, concerns, clarification needed from the team? No? Well, Ms. Gaston, thank you
Okay.
for the information, and I'm sure we'll be hearing and circling back. So thank you.
Thank y'all so much.
Will be Mr. Soto, review and consider information from administration regarding the school district's current plan for repurposing district-wide facilities. Sir.
Yes, sir. We just want to lay out on what we've already done as we visited Rayburn on our team building and kind of just lay out for the trustees and the community on all the repurposing that we have, what is next in the next phase, and if we need to pivot or we would like to have some suggestions from the board.
So I don't know if the team wants to peruse through the packet, or Dr. Hinosa, are you wanting to present as we go through?
Yes, sir. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moreno. If you look in the board book, starting on page 23, we're really focused in on really page 24 for tonight. We did make the information available that starts on the pages after that. It's more the construction progress. We just wanted to have the board, give the board the opportunity to review all that. But that section, the construction progress, will actually be information that we will take a deeper look at the board meeting on Monday. So for tonight, really our focus is really, as Mr. Soto mentioned, is really just to revisit some of the facility upgrades that we've done with the repurposed buildings. So if you were to see in your board book on page 24, this item is actually in your board book. The handout that we provided individually, that would be a different that's a different packet. But this particular information is on page 24 in the board book. Oops. So this is not necessarily in sequential order in the way that they were implemented. They were just basically just for talking points. But if you look at phase one, as far as the Moral Center goes, Moral Center with the repurposing, that provided a place. Initially, when we had initial preliminary discussions on repurposing, I know the conversation was about having central office located at Moral. But since then, we've relocated student support services and the care center. The care center had with the service they provide for our students and our staff and our community had outgrown the care center. The Moral Center is where we currently have our student support services, and the care center was moved from March Street, from the Sosa Center and the care center to Moral. The Rayburn Center, which is where we have the MOU with the Boys and Girls Club for that one wing. We also have our police department, who we're getting close to the end of finishing those renovations. So the police department should be moving over. If you've driven by the Rayburn Center, you've seen the fence that already occupies that the western parking lot. And so we're in the process are to be just better stewards of our funding. A lot of the work that's inside on the renovations is actually being done in-house, and it's not being contracted out, again, just so we could be good stewards of our funding. So we're almost at a point where our police department will be moving from their Vestal site into that area. And then also, I know we had the last work session at the what was the library at Rayburn Center, which is now Information Services, right? One of the technology facilities for that. So the Rayburn Center is almost, with the exception of PD, which is near completion, is almost at full capacity in terms of what the plans that we had for that. The phase three, as Mr. Soto mentioned, Columbia Heights going from the Fenley Center, the students of Avante going from the Fenley Center over to Columbia Heights. They did ask the school district for permission, administration for permission to visit with architects and engineers to go in to Columbia Heights to do a feasibility study on that move. So then the plan again for Columbia Heights would be to have the Avante students go from Fenley Center over to that facility. Carol Bell right now is currently under construction, right, for the CTE program. That's scheduled to be completed shortly, either towards the end of this month or the beginning of next month. So we currently have our students that are occupying the classroom spaces upstairs. But right now, the labs and the last of the classwork is being done downstairs. So with all hopes that by the end of the month or early next month, everything should be completed there. And then also pupil personnel moved over there at the beginning of last school year, and they occupy that front office space. So that's the current use for Carol Bell. With that being said, what that does leave us is our facilities that we haven't designated as far as what they will be used for, and those are in that last column, which is that the I hate to call it the old police department, but the former police department, right, which is at the Vestal site behind McCollum. And then right next door to that, where information services was at. And then also with the moving of with the moving of student support services over out of SOSA and the care center, then we have those two buildings back here on March. So really that's kind of been the focus with the repurposed building in terms of making great use of the space. And so really at this point, didn't know if y'all had any questions in terms of where we're at with any of these or what next steps would be for some of these facilities.
Any comments, concerns, or clarification needed on this part of the presentation? Ms. Ortiz?
Yes. Mr. Soto, so after we've done all of this, what will be the oldest building that we will be occupying or in use?
Probably this office, this building. Students or
Overall, in the district, it would be this building?
more likely probably this building.
And so if we were to want to do something, would we be prohibited? I know that there was pushback on the bond, but I don't know if the bond was specifically written that central office cannot move into another building or
Mr. Resendez, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that since it's facility usage and there will be some monies left over on other projects, can we use some of the bond leftovers if this,
If everything, yes, sir. So in generally, the bond language, when you went out to voters, had the catch-all that, for other, but if everything we promised the community is paid for and there's money left, and it falls within just, the construction that the language included, then you may be able to use it, yeah. Does that make sense?
yes,
Does
sir.
that answer your question? Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. Yes, sir.
well, I'm just thinking a bit because the core of all of our student services begins here with your folks, and we push everything out. And yes, we appreciate everybody that's on the ground and the front lines and doing all of that. But I'm just asking that question, just throwing it out there, not that it'll go anywhere, but just to throw it out there.
Yes, Ms.
Sure.
Ortiz, at our original conversations that we had with repurposing, Mr. Resendez, we had, and this was already post-bond, was moving, as stated there, is move central office to Morrill, because the history behind Morrill, have a boardroom in Morrill, and this would become the Harndale Care Center because we wanted to expand the Harndale, the care center services. And so this would be an upgrade for where they're at right now, because Harndale Care Center is right where all the palm trees are at, right? And then student support services, do you remember where we were sending them to, Dr. Nosa?
They would have stayed in the SOSA Center.
They would have stayed in the
Yes,
social center.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Mancha?
I had brought it up to you, Mr. Chair, and I had brought it up to Mr. Soto, that I would love for us to consider moving central office to Morrill Elementary School, mainly because of the history. When the Morrill family donated the land for Harlandale, it was a great thing that they did. As it grew, and we ended up changing that high school from Morro High School to Hardendale High School. Morro became an elementary school. To turn it into really not a useful facility. I mean, it's a useful facility, but to praise it, I would love for it to become the main office to represent the whole district. And I'm pretty sure the Morrow family would be very proud of that it went from a high school to an elementary school to the main office of the whole district. This is over 100 years of history, sir. And I would love for my colleagues to support me in making that dream come true.
All
Mr.
right,
Chair.
thank you for sharing that, sir.
Mr. Chair, I
Pitts?
only bring it up because I think this board has done a wonderful job in making sure that our students and our teachers and our staff have been taken care of, our students first. And this it would be, I think, is this the oldest building left in the district?
This would
Left
be,
that's standing.
this would be one
in
of the oldest,
use.
that in Findlay, but with the Avance moving out of Findlay, then it would be, in use, this would be, yes, ma'am.
Okay, I was just throwing it out there, asking the question. Thank you.
Any other comments or concerns or clarification needed towards this present part of the presentation? I know, I guess based off of what has been shared by the team, obviously it's something that's open for discussion. At some point, I don't know, was there some trepidation? Because that was the initial idea, was to have central office at Morro. Is there still trepidation? Because I know that the chiller had broken and all that stuff kind of kept us from proceeding forward and.
Yeah, everything's up and running there. We just slowed down the movement of the social center and student support services heading over there for right now. We slowed it down, just the mere fact that there is some reservations. I guess there is some conversations that need to be taking place by the board and give us direction. We can put it as an individual item, Mr. Resendez, for if you guys want it Monday or if you want it for another month. I mean, we'll follow the lead on this one.
I think something like that would need to be somewhat vetted, so I don't want to just have information like, hey, you want to do it this way. If it's not feasible, then we want to know the rationale behind it. I think that's appropriate for us as a team to make a good decision. Just like when the idea of Columbia Heights, I love the fact that we're looking at being able to utilize that area, especially because it's our furthest reach towards Azamora. And other than that, there's nothing else over there. And I feel in my mind that side of our district gets kind of left out in a lot of places. So to have our young kids, and I know a lot of activities, events with young 3, 4, 5-year-olds is going to bring a lot of people to that area to realize that there's a lot more to our area than just what's on this side of Pleasanton, because they never make it out there. So I really appreciate that you guys were able to put that together, sir. And I know that's something that we didn't even think about until after the fact of repurposing. So, but yeah, if we can come up with an idea of where or how, or if it's possible, if that's something that the team wants to proceed with, I think everything else is working out. Because the one thing too, in just going through all this stuff, because it's important for us to gather this information of the usage, is we also don't want to refurbish and create an area where it's underutilized. I think this is the oldest building in terms of not having been touched by anything. All our elementary schools were less than were no older than the year 2000. So that's something that we kind of need to gather and see how it's going to be better served and better used. Because I know there might be some areas that might be unoccupied, even if we do refurbish them. So I guess the utilization has to align with the refurbishments. I don't know, Dr. So you can elaborate on anything further in regards to this piece.
No, so just to kind of reiterate, kind of you had mentioned the concerns with Morrill initially. There was some chiller issue, but that got replaced. I know the Board of Trustees, approved that for that chiller replacement. So that did slow the process down some. But again, we'll gather whatever information, the direction that y'all would like for the next board meeting to be able to present that information, those items to y'all.
Okay, well, I think that's a plan of action you guys can provide for us. Anything further on that piece, Mr. Soto?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Board of Trustees, it should be, we should already have that information because this plan of action was already about to happen. And then we pivoted when we decided to keep central office here. So that'll be readily available in a month if you guys wanted a month, or if y'all wanted in 2 months.
Yeah, I think so. Just so we know what the actual cost would be and how long the process would be to proceed with it. The last thing we want is to make a haste decision where if financially it doesn't mirror the objective that we have with this bond, and perhaps we can wait a little longer to see how we proceed with it. I think we're good on that piece. Are there any questions related to the other items related to the floors, the scoreboards, things like that? I know, Mr. Are we?
Yes, the next piece, as Dr. Nuez has alluded to, is construction projects. We're gonna do those during announcements because
Okay.
we don't want to, we've been bombarding y'all with information. I mean, that PFC and then the facility usage, and then you're gonna have construction. So we're gonna move on to the next item, if it's okay with you, Mr. Chair, and do construction during announcements at the board meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate that. So if you guys have questions along the way, you have the packet of information for us to go off of. Moving on to item 5, the board focused on student outcomes 48% of the time in the September work session and regular board meeting. So I think that's a pretty resounding success in terms of us as a team. So great job for us. And we'll continue to put the emphasis and focus on student outcomes, student achievements. So item 6, the board will review and discuss the purchase of supplies and equipment through Elliott Electrical Supply in the amount of $135,743.54 for the CTE Education Center funded from Bond 2022 by Board Purchasing Cooperative under contract number 657-21. Mr. Soto?
Yes, Megan Guerrero and Ms. Casey?
Good evening, members of the board, Mr. Superintendent Soto. The CTE department in partnership with the bond is asking for you to approve this purchase. This particular purchase is going to be for all the hand tools, power tools, ladders, scaffolding necessary for our electrical trades, HVAC and plumbing trades that's going to go into their labs.
All right, any questions on this, guys, or comments or concerns?
I have a question,
Yes.
Mr. Chair. Ms. Guerrero, is this gonna cover everything they need to get started, or will there be, this is
So
preliminary?
this is kind of us going through every screwdriver we're going to need to make sure that every kid has access to the proper screwdrivers, hammers, and like I said, power tools in that. We're still missing some of the very trade specific tools for HVAC and plumbing. So we're still trying to generate quotes for that, but this will get our kids started and hands-on as soon as they come in.
All right, any other comments, concerns, or clarification needed? All right, well, Ms. Guerrero, thank you on that piece. Moving on to item 7, the board will review and discuss the submission of state waiver for exception for the bilingual education program and an ESL waiver for the ESL program for the 24-25 school year to the Texas Education Agency. Ms. Casey?
Thank
And
you.
do you have
Mr.
the next couple or just this one?
Just this one.
Okay,
Just
good.
this one, thank you. So the board is asked to approve the submission of an estimated 25 state waiver requests for the exception of bilingual education program and an ESL waiver for the ESL program. The district has taken all reasonable steps to secure appropriately certified teachers for bilingual education and ESL instruction, but has not been successful. The district will implement a comprehensive ongoing professional development plan to enhance the skills of teachers serving our emergent bilingual students including uncertified teachers working in language programs, and may also include additional teachers that are working with other students. At least 10% of the bilingual education allotment will fund this plan.
Comments, concerns, or clarification needed on this piece? Ms.
Yes,
Cavazos?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Soto, if I may ask Ms. Casey, Ms. Casey, we had waivers last year as well.
Ye-
How many? Were they the same number?
Yes, ma'am. So for ESL, we had 8 secondary campuses. So all of our campuses, we had 35 teachers for ESL. This year we have 26. So that number is reduced, but the same number of campuses. And for bilingual exceptions, which is also different, we had 4 elementary campus with 6 classes. This year we have 5 elementaries with 12 classes.
Thank you, Ms. Casey.
All right, any other comments, concerns, or clarification on this item?
Just
Yes,
really
Ms. Ortiz?
quick, a clarification. Last year, we had how many? So these are uncertified teachers that are in the bilingual program.
There's 2 different groups. There's a bilingual program, which is our elementary, and then we have our ESL teachers, which is our ESL program, and our secondary students that are serviced through ESL. So that's our secondary program. So for the bilingual, for an elementary, we have 5 elementary campuses, which include 12 classrooms. Those are classrooms we will ask a waiver for. For our secondary, we have 8 campuses and 26 teachers that will require an exception.
So at the elementary school level, we're asking for 12, and that's for all 12 classes will need a waiver? I'm
12 classes at 5 different schools, dual language classes, do not have a bilingual certified teacher. They may have, they would probably have a partner. an
So do we have
educational partner.
any that are bilingual certified?
Yes, we do.
Okay, more than the 12 or?
Absolutely, more than the
Okay.
12. I can get
I just
you
want to
the
make
number.
sure. I want to,
We absolutely have more than 12.
and then on the ESL, we have 25?
We have 26 teachers that don't have an ESL endorsement. So this will include any English teacher in all of secondary that are English teachers and they're certified, but they don't have an ESL endorsement.
And I can't quite remember, Mr. Soto, but I don't know if I was having this discussion with you or a classmate when it comes to the ESL and the emergent bilingual and the dual language. I know a lot of these students, especially in the secondary, they're not necessarily taking, 4 core content areas. It might be SLAR, it might be history, but as long as we have someone that is ESL certified, and that's been a big push of the district, they're being serviced.
Yes, and with ESL, we also offer teachers. We pay for them to test. We also provide training for them to prepare to test. We pay for the testing. They're only, the only cost they incur is to put it on the certification, which is an additional cost once they pass the test.
I don't know, that makes it a little bit easier for us to understand as a team, because I know sometimes it get a little confusing because we just had another conversation about waivers and now we're talking about ESL. And that way we know that ultimately all the teachers are certified. It's just we don't have the certified ESL dual language teachers in elementary.
In elementary, it may be that we have, for example, our educational partners that are in a bilingual class. They're not certified. So if they're not certified in bilingual. We would require a waiver for them.
All right. Any other comments, concerns, or clarification needed? All right, we'll proceed to the next item, which is 8, the board review and discuss investment reports for quarter ending September 30th. Does that mean, Mr. Soto, the next couple are for Mr. Flores?
Yes, the next 3, sir.
All right, if you don't mind proceeding through them all, sir.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Soto, Superintendent of Schools. Item 8, it starts on page 36 of your board book. It is the investment report for the quarter ending September 30th of 2024. So this covers July through September. And we have a summary as part of the transmittal. We have a summary of the different funds that we have: the general fund, general facilities, health insurance, settlement, stadium, facilities assessment, and debt service. And following that, you have the full investment report. So the general fund realized a decrease of $16,369,977 during the first quarter. This is primarily due to the district does not receive a state aid payment in August. Therefore, sustaining the reduction to the fund. Operations have continued and TEA payments have resumed per the regular schedule. The General Facilities Bond 2022 fund did show an increase overall of $7.2 million. And it does reflect the new issuance of bonds of $10 million that were issued in August, minus continued progress in payments of projects across the district. Our health insurance, this fund continues to fluctuate based on payments issued for services rendered to staff. The overall change this quarter reflects a decrease of $527,652. Our settlement fund 2017, there's an increase in the bank balance due to outstanding checks and payments made. The district continues to spend committed funds on construction services. Our stadium bond 2022 shows the increase only for the interest earned and the total balance of $20,553. So that really has been utilized for the most part. Our facility assessment fund shows a net decrease from the prior quarter of $773,000. The fund does hold the maintenance tax notes, and the proceeds continues to be utilized for construction and allowable renovations. And the debt service fund shows a decrease of $8.9 million. During this quarter, accounting for the debt service payments for principal and interest during the month of August. So in August, we did have our debt service payments, and that's reflected there. So the full report is that follows that initial cover page for your review. Any questions on the investment report?
No, I don't believe so. We could proceed, sir.
The next item, item number 9, is our budget to actual for the first quarter that also ended September 30th. We do have the initially adopted budget of $128,968,520 in revenues and expenses of $139,837,535. The staff continues to closely monitor the enrollment and average daily attendance to continue monitoring the anticipated revenues and expenses. As of October the 3rd, enrollment is lower than the same time last year by approximately 238 students. However, attendance, the percentage has increased, and we have our attendance percentages for the first 6 weeks at about 94%. So attendance is better. However, enrollment has decreased. We do have the overall revenues for the general fund at $11,117,774 and expenses at $26,832,094. For the child nutrition fund, revenues of $244,904, expenses at $3,932,693. And for the debt service fund, revenues of $743,682 and expenses as $11,036,804. Questions on the current budget to actual report?
No, you can proceed, sir.
Thank you. And the item number 10 is to review the budget amendment 2025-1. So this would be our first board budget amendment of the year. It will allow us to increase state revenues to align to our latest state aid budget. And the district administration is recommending an increase to the expense to the functions 11, 51, 71, and 99 by the same amount. So the amendment is for a total of $508,250 in increase in state revenue and increasing instructional services by $150,000, maintenance and operations by $80,000, debt service $203,000, and other governmental entities $75,000. This allocations, function 11 is for instructional services. Function 51, we are looking at purchasing a box truck and lift gate. So we have a need for that, so we're able to allocate it there. Function 71 will cover the last maintenance tax notes payment that was made. And function 99 is for overall payments of collections of property taxes.
All right. Any comments, concerns, clarification on this? On this one, I guess, Mr. Flores, does that indicate that we've been able to hire some more staff? Is that what that indicates on item 11?
So function 11, it allows us, if the need is, yes, we have had to open a couple of spots for some of the
No, well, that's
classrooms.
good. I mean, I'm willing, I'm sure this team is whatever we need to do if it's
Yeah.
for kids. I mean, we'll do what's necessary, sir. So,
Yes, sir.
so that's good to hear. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, that's what it's for.
Even if it's incurring a little more. So, all right. Any other comments, concerns, clarification on this item? No? All right. Is
Thank-
that the last one on that one, sir? Or you-
Yes, that is the last
Okay.
one. Yes. Thank you.
To item 11, the board will review and discuss the rebranding of North American Solutions to Insurica and update the terms of the coverage. I guess, is that Ms. Hubbard? So Ms. Hubbard, when you're ready to proceed, you're welcome to. Welcome.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for allowing me to present this. This is a simple update from North American Solutions to Insurica. The coverage has not changed. They just rebranded. And so that's just to allow us to continue to utilize this vendor within our purchasing department.
Are there any comments, concerns, or clarification when it comes to this item? Easy today. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, which will be the board will review and discuss to award and negotiate RFPQ 250800 Design Build Athletics Facilities Project to pending vendor. Funding will be allocated from Prop A General Facilities Funds from Bond 2022 program. Is this going to be something for later? Or Dr. Nosa, do you mind?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Moreno. So for this particular item that we'll be bringing forward for approval at the next regularly scheduled board meeting. So part of Proposition A was to do some upgrades with some of the facilities. And on the supporting document, it'll show you which is the facility, which is the tennis courts, turfing both the baseball and softball field out at the Tejeda complex, and then also adding some synthetic competitive tracks at both high schools. So we did put this out for bid, and we received, and we're currently evaluating this. And so when you see it as a placeholder, you don't see a particular vendor name on there because we're finishing up our evaluation process, but we'll be completed with the evaluation and vetting the vendors prior to the posting of the agenda. And so we will bring a vendor forward at the board meeting on Monday. And we also have Coach Martinez here in attendance in case there was any specific questions regarding to some of these upgrades.
All right. Any comments, concerns, clarification? Ms. Cavazos? Ms. Ortiz, please.
Yes, so we're looking at one vendor to do all of these improvements?
That's correct. That's how it was. So we specifically asked for, as part of the RFP, companies that had sport and athletic field experience that would be able to provide the best quality for these particular items.
And the budget for these?
The budget for the entire project. So what was set aside as part of Proposition A was 10 million. And so we're in the process of evaluating that. So we haven't finalized the estimated dollar amount that they've sent in to us yet.
Any other comments, concerns, clarification on this item? All right. We'll move to the next item, which is, I guess we may have some questions on this one. The board will review and discuss to increase medical insurance premiums, deductibles, and annual maximum out-of-pocket to become effective January 1, 2025. Ms. Hubbard?
Thank you and good evening, members of the board. I have with me Lori Rice and Laura Pretty from Brown & Brown Insurance, which is our broker for employee benefits. A little bit of background information, and I do have something that should be projected up on this screen for your reference. On January 1st, 2023, Harlandale ISD committed to a partially self-funded medical insurance plan. In addition to the medical premium that each member has deducted per pay period, which is $160 a month for employee only, 950 for employee plus spouse, 710 for employee plus children, and 1,190 for family. This is monthly. There are also deductibles, a $500 individual deductible and a $1,000 family deductible that have to be met annually. Coinsurance is at 20% of services up to the maximum out of pocket and copays for services. These rates have remained unchanged for 2 years. I invite you to look at the screen as a side-by-side comparison. As I've just stated, these the column on your left, you see the 23-24 member rates, which outlines everything that I just stated. And again, they have remained unchanged for 2 years. So in an effort to further steer the Harlandale Medical Plan towards being self-sustaining, board consideration and approval is requested to change the Harlandale Medical Plan monthly premiums to $156 monthly, employee only, $1,170 for employee plus spouse, $720 for employee plus children, and $1,380 for family. These are the premiums that would be deducted from their monthly from their pay periods. It is also recommended to increase the calendar year deductible to $1,000 individual and $2,000 family, as well as the out-of-pocket maximum to $7,500 individual and $15,000 family. No change to the copays for prescription medications or to standard medical services received outside of the Kempton Premier Provider KPP-free contracts will change. These proposed changes would become effective January 1st, 2025.
All right. Any comments, concerns, or clarification needed on the information presented to us? Do you want to share something, Mr. Soto?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Hubbard, can you put oh, there it is. The number of employees that are impact, I guess I can't see it with that.
Correct. Excuse me. The number of employees enrolled broken down, that's current year to date. 919 employees are employee only, 12 are employee plus spouse, 73 are employee plus children, and 29 are employee plus family, for a total of 1,033 employees enrolled in the Harlandale Medical Plan.
Okay. So I guess based off of that, Ms. Hubbard, I mean, I'm sure a lot of the people that are enrolled in it are married, but they're probably electing to have their spouse probably take the insurance of the others, or what does the data tell us there?
That the data tells us that the majority of enrollees are employee only. And we have open enrollment coming within the next couple of weeks. It starts on October 28th, and it's going to run for 2 full weeks. We anticipate those numbers to grow as far as employee only. Employee plus spouse and children and family has really held steady for the past 2 years. And the majority of the members have not even met their deductible. That's one thing that a lot of data has shown us whenever we pull the numbers. So increasing the deductible by utilizing the avenues that are built into the plan minimize the members' out-of-pocket expense. There's a lot of services, a great deal of services that can be utilized through the plan, through the direct contracts that we have through the Kempton Premier Providers, at no cost to the member or any of their enrolled dependents.
Mr. Soto, could you remind the team how many actual employees we have at Harlandale?
We have a little bit over 2,000.
So I guess like utilization's like at 50% of people electing to have insurance.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Has it historically always been that way? Because I feel like it's kind of been higher before.
We can get that number.
Absolutely. Are you wanting from 2022?
Prior to us going in, yeah,
course.
prior to us entering, yeah,
5 years?
yeah.
Okay. Yes, sir. I can provide that information.
No,
of
thank you.
course.
Ms. Cavazos?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Hubbard, I assume because there's so many services within the network that are free, hence why deductibles haven't been met.
Correct. There's no need to meet a deductible if you have nothing out of pocket to pay.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Luna?
I know at this point it's probably mute, but when I worked for the district, I think I remember my employee plus family being way higher than it is up there. And, so I was just wondering, comparable to what's out there with Blue Cross or Blue Shield or whoever, when compared to, is it still lower than those entities that we used to deal with?
This is significantly lower, as well as our deductible is significantly lower.
So shouldn't we be marking that too, is to attract more employees, especially in the bilingual department, that we need so many employees? That this is a plus working for our district? I don't hear that. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Ortiz?
that point, Mr. Luna, is exactly what I was going towards, because I'd like to see what the premiums were prior to us going self-funded. Because I'd like to find out, and then what the participation rate is, if it was at 50% back then. But I know back then when I first started, everybody was complaining about how expensive it was for employee only or employee plus spouse. There is two questions that I have. One is, so I'm a federal employee, and so it's really hard for me to relate only having 10 days for enrollment when we have 30 days. So I don't know what the reasoning is for that. And then the other thing is that where it goes from employee plus children and then employee plus family. So I'm thinking, okay, so you're adding just the spouse and it's going up $500 or almost? Is that what it is?
Are you talking about the difference between, I'm so sorry, if you could scroll over and go up, the difference is 190 from what has been in place for 2 years.
Guys, do away with the clock for right now. Don't worry about the clock.
Yeah, if you want, we can. Yeah, that gives us an idea right there, because you're right there. So right there, we'd see the difference of proposed change of $4 or going down $4 for employee only, 220 for additional for employee and spouse, and then 10 for employee and children. And again, I think Mr. Soto, is that one the one where it's one, or that's one child, and then employee and family is 1 or 7?
Yes, sir. Employee and children could be 1 or 20, and then the employee and family is, you're adding the spouse with the children. But I would task, what we could do, Ms. Hubbard, we can help out with the board, is benefits as well. We need to show them the benefits that this insurance plan is in comparison to previous insurance plans, right?
Yes, of course.
And then we could show the competitive rates that we have in comparison to others that are out there, right?
course.
And so we can do that by Monday.
I do have a question. Do you want me to, Ms. Ortiz, in response to your question, I'm so sorry. Do you want me to include, deductibles, coinsurance, and copays in those retrospective look backs? Because these do factor in to the amount of money that one pays for healthcare.
All right. What
Yes,
was that,
Ms.
Mr.
Hubbard, go ahead and include those since we already have them in
Yes, of
place.
course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes, Ms. Weeks?
Ms. Hubbard, is it a safe assumption to say if there were more employees enrolled, the premiums could go down, or it is what it is, the numbers are what they are?
If we had more employees on the plans and more employees contributing to the cost of the claims, then absolutely. That was always our long-term goal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then just the one question about why is it only a 10-day open period or open enrollment?
Open enrollment's going to last for 14 days. It can be done in person, it can be done online, it can be done solo. I do a lot of one-on-one enrollments. There are many different avenues. We selected 14 days because it just fit the schedule. 14 days has in the past, we've done it for 14 days for the last 2 years, and it worked out very well. Everybody was able to get their enrollments completed.
So do y'all still, because I remember when I first came in, y'all were going to every single campus to recruit. Do y'all still do that or no?
I don't know what you're talking about recruiting, but I am doing informational. Of course, we do. We have a team of enrollers on a schedule that are going to be set up at each and every campus. That information is being finalized right now, and it's going to be sent out district-wide so that everybody knows where the enrollers are going to be and from what time. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Mancha?
Mr. Soto, if I may. Maybe if we would increase it another 5 days, maybe it'll allow some other people to participate instead of them considering it a shorter time.
Increasing
Does
the
that make
open enrollment
sense?
timeframe?
If we, you only giving them 14 days. Let's say you add 5 more days. Maybe that'll increase our participation. If we try something like that, since we've tried it for 2 years and we haven't able to increase it even more, maybe we add 5 more days, maybe it will increase it a little bit more, giving the people an opportunity to participate a little bit more. I'm just a consideration.
Yes, thank you.
Mr.
Mr.
Soto,
Chair.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Reese?
On that note, to follow up with Mr. Mancha's statement, giving them additional days that may allow them to check what benefits their spouses have and kind of match up and decide, ultimately what's the best plan for the family, or, maybe entice them to come on over this way. I wanted the information to be out there about if there is more participation, would the premiums be lower, so that all the employees can know that, yes, if you do participate, your premiums may be lower, costs can be lower for the entire district. So we're not, having these questions come up again next year.
Thank you, of course. Yes, I am currently doing a district tour in preparation for open enrollment so that employees can be ready whenever open enrollment occurs. I will definitely incorporate that into my presentation so that they can better see the full picture.
Mr. Soto, if I may.
Yeah, Mr. Flores?
In addition to the information presented tonight, on Monday's board meeting will also include language to allow the district to fund the health insurance plan if needed for an additional 1.5 million. So when we started this 2 years ago, we allowed the district to fund it up to 2 million. That has practically, the majority has already been utilized. So we'll bring that recommendation to the board to approve that piece.
Ms. Ortiz?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I was just going to ask, and are we providing information in Spanish?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
All
so
of
when our recruiters, or I'm sorry, enrollers, they're, and then the paperwork or the, whatever, the brochure that our employees are seeing is also in Spanish. I don't mean to offend anybody, but I mean, because I think this is this is better than the federal government plan. And it's certainly more affordable, and I want to make sure that our hourly wage employees have an opportunity to see the benefits of this, and I don't want language to be a barrier.
The enrollers that are going to be out at all of our sites are bilingual, and our guidebook is being printed in English and in Spanish.
And I guess just to clarify, Ms. Hubbard, when it comes to actively enrolling folks, I mean, you guys are actively sending out messages, emails, things like that. So I know people are acutely aware that that is imminent. In addition to that, I know when you visit a campus, you're there practically the whole day, right?
Yes.
And sometimes even early and then sometimes later. Because I know sometimes depending on what conference period and how many people are out and when the cafeteria and custodial staff can go, seventh, eighth period can be pretty tight for a lot of folks. So I know you guys will kind of align the need based off of the staff you can provide for them. So I know those options will be there for them. And in addition to that, I guess with the information that's being presented, and I don't know why I'm losing my train of thought now, but it kind of refers to, okay, I know back now. So whenever we at my district were given the information, we didn't get the booklets till the day of. So that's not going to be a situation here that we're going to run into where people don't know what plan they're looking at. Because most of the time, to be quite honest, we have some people that are very in tune with what they need for their health needs. And so they're ready to go like, hey, I'm just need to check a box. Like, are you done? Because I'm waiting. I got 30 minutes still and I need to go take care of something in the classroom. So I know most of our folks are ready to go. So all that information should be readily available to them on the day that we start enrolling.
Yes, sir. So like I said, the guidebooks are being printed, but they're also going to be a digital version. And all of the benefit summaries is included in the on the portal that we utilize to enroll employees. So all of that information is going to be at fingertips, so that whenever at the point of enrollment, if they have any last minute questions, that can be answered with factual information.
Wonderful. Any other comments, concerns, or clarification needed? So I guess one thing, sir, I know Mr. Flores mentioned it. Does that support us making the cost more affordable with what Mr. Flores mentioned, or is that just kind of handling the normal procedure, what we would have to do?
Go ahead, Mr. Flores.
Right, so that would be in case that the fund is not able to support the claims, it would allow the district to cover the claims.
So kind of like a contingency.
Right.
So, okay.
Correct, yes.
Okay. All right, I understand that now. Okay. And all this information will be available to us before Monday, so we can ensure. Okay.
Yes, we'll include it in your board book. Once it gets posted Friday, it will be part of your board book.
Okay, fantastic. All right, any other comments, concerns, or clarification needed on this item? No? Well, I appreciate your time, Ms. Hubbard, and taking our questions and our considerations. All right. So moving on to the next item, which is item 14, the board will review and discuss the purchase of a chiller system for Harlandale Middle School A wing from Johnson Controls at an approximate cost of $147,622, utilizing TIPS contract number 22010601. Funding will be from the maintenance and tax notes. I'm assuming Dr. Hinojosa. All right, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, so for this particular item, again, that we'll be seeking approval for on Monday, there is a chiller, after evaluating and assessing one of the chillers at at Harndale Middle School, which is the chiller that you can see off of White Avenue. One of the chillers is just outdated and we've just put a lot of money into it, trying to keep it functional, and it's actually forcing it really to only be able to operate at 50% capacity. So after reviewing several proposals and quotes with our foreman and myself and the director of maintenance, the selection that we feel best fits our needs is going to be the one we're going to bring forward with Johnson Control on Monday for approval.
Any comments, concerns, or clarification needed on this item? Yes, they're extremely expensive pieces of equipment.
Very expensive, yes, sir.
And what's the lifetime of it?
They 20 years if we do the preventive maintenance.
Perfect. So hopefully we get good use out of it. And it's unfortunately it's extremely needed in Texas. So any comments, concerns, or clarification on this before we proceed? All right. So moving on to item 15, and I believe it's Mr. Dr. Reynoso still. The board will review and discuss the final invoice for Marksman's General Contractors for the Memorial Stadium Phase 2 project in the amount of $4,918 to be paid from the combination of local resources, stadium bond, 2022 proceeds, maintenance tax notes, and the general fund, sir.
Yes, sir. So as board policy stipulates, so whenever the final payment is being brought forth by a construction company, that needs to receive board approval. And so for this particular item on Monday, we'll be seeking that the amount of $4,900 to be the final payment to Marksman for the work that they did on the locker room and the stadium renovation with the press box, which was Phase 2.
All right. Any comments, concerns, clarification? Ms. Cavazos?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Noza, if you could please let us know, I know I've asked again before and you've been kind enough to answer. I just want to reiterate it for the community and to be clear and transparent. Were we within or under budget? And was it done, the construction, was it done in the time it allowed it to be done?
Yes, ma'am. So this last payment was what we had to keep us under budget, and it also was done in the time that they had requested.
Perfect. Thank you. I just want that out there on a video. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Luna?
Yes, Mr. Soto and Dr. Reynoso. So this mean is a stadium done, finito?
Yes, sir. We did the final punch list and the certificate of occupancies have all been submitted and are posted. And with this concludes or finalizes everything with the stadium.
That sounds good. So for Frontier Bowl, we're ready to go and we can showcase our new stadium, correct?
Yeah, yes,
And
sir.
have balloons and flyovers and everything. We have flyovers already anyway, right?
Yes, sir. But it's finalized and it's been completed at the beginning of the season.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Ortiz?
Mr. Chair, Mr. Soto, you know I'm going to ask about this. I'm asking about the elevator. Do we have a warranty on it? And have we had any other issues like what happened where we had to call out the fire department to come and rescue the opposing team's coaching staff?
Yes, ma'am. No, so that's a great question. It is under warranty. And since that last incident, we hadn't had any. We've had them come out to service to provide us a report. We are working with Marksman and with the elevator company to give us a very detailed report as to why it happened. And so since then, luckily, it hasn't happened again.
Mr. Chair. Dr. Hinojosa, how long is that warranty going to be for that elevator?
For just with Marksman, it's a year, but
I understand what the contract is,
Yes,
but
sir.
what about with the elevator company that installed it?
I can find that out and I can present that at the next board meeting.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Ortiz?
So all elevators are supposed to be inspected by state and certified, or they get some kind of certification that they've passed safety inspections. And so I'm assuming that we had that done before we did our punch list and send them off to the.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. So TDLR has to come in and certify, and so they will provide the yearly inspection. And so prior to us it being turned over to us, that did take place. If not, they won't certify it. And so that's the conversation we're having with Marksman and the elevator company to make sure that it did pass certification when we received the punch list. And we've had a couple of incidences since then in terms of maybe not to the magnitude of having those individuals that were in the elevator at the time when it stopped. But since then, we have communicated and documented all that, so we can have it for our records. But again, Marksman, the general contractor for the press box, and myself, we had communication earlier this week, and so they are deeply invested as well to make sure that we're provided with a safe and something that we can utilize for our community.
All right, any other further comments, concerns, or clarification needed? All right, we'll proceed to the next item, which is the board will review and discuss alternative options for RFCSP 200-101 HISD area and multipurpose building, alternate 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Dr. Hinojosa.
Thank you again, sir. So for this particular item, this is the handout that was provided. We didn't finalize some of this information in time to get it for the board book, but we will put it into the board book for Monday, even though it'll just be, it'll be for your record. So I won't reference page numbers, but we'll just kind of go through them slide by slide. Also, the presentation will be up on the board because there'll be a short clip of some examples to be able to provide that information for you. So you won't find it in your board book, but it'll play here shortly on the screen. But prior to that, the slide, if I can go to, yeah. So in February, when Arquitectura SA, the architects that designed and provided the final schematic design of the gym, there were some questions from some board members in terms of like looking at maybe some different options or putting some alternates into the design that they presented that night. And so really the purpose of this is just to review those alternates and just kind of show one, what the alternates are in terms of how they fit into the overall scheme and schematic design of the arena, and then also provide a cost estimate as far as how they would impact the current budget. So if you were to look on the second page there was 5 alternates that were discussed that night. 2 alternates really pertain to the gym floor, and the last 3 alternates pertain to video board and projection system. So if you were to look at, again, in your handout or on the screen, the base bid, the floors are by a company that's been in business for 125 years. They specialize in court system from organizations or churches all the way through professional level. And so the base bid that was submitted, so when we reference a base bid, and we'll talk dollar amounts towards the end of the last slide, but when we say base bid, that's the base, which is still competitive. It's a quality caliber floor that is for competition. So the base bid is really what was submitted initially by the companies to give us that initial budgeted amount. So the base bid for this, the flooring, was a BioChannel Star, which again is top quality for high school and even college and university level. A second tiered level of floor would be the MVP, which is alternate 1. You see a cost of $50,000. That court would add $50,000 to the existing budget if we chose to go to that floor. That particular floor is specifically used at the professional level. And so you will see that on some practice facilities and like the recently built practice facility for the Spurs. And there's some other professional venues that will use that caliber of floor. Alternate 2 is about half that amount, still a quality floor. But again, the difference is the kind of subflooring that's underneath each of them. And so that's where the cost comes in. It doesn't really vary very much in terms of like playability or competitive level for high schools. But it just adds to the cost depending on the quality and the caliber of floor that we would like. So those are the first 2 alternates. Any questions on the floor before?
No, I think we're good right now, sir.
Yeah, trying to move forwards. Can y'all advance it to the next slide? So if you look at the next slide, which will be alternates 3, 4, and 5, these all pertain to the video board. The question came up, or a discussion we had at the at that schematic design meeting, was just what would the added cost would be to certain type of scoreboards that we would use in the arena or the multi-purpose facility. Because as we stated, it's going to be a multi-use facility. And so if you see the three alternates, the first 2 alternates, 3 and 4, the gym obviously is going to be equipped with a scoreboard. So what these alternates would do would be adding video capability to the scoreboards. So if we were to add video to the wall, the scoreboard's going to be mounted on the wall. That would add $82,000 to the current budget. If we were to add video component or capabilities to the center, the scoreboard is going to be in the center of the facility. It would add $125,000. And I know one of the questions that was asked about the projection system, to be able to project graphics and advertising and so forth onto the floor, that would add $737,000 to the existing budget. Oops. So this particular one, again, what we wanted to do in the next couple of slides is really show what the base bid was, which is a traditional scoreboard on the left-hand side. And this would be alternate 3, or we would add video board, which would it look like on the right-hand side. And so this would be the wall-mounted scoreboard, and that would be on one of the opposite sides of the facility. And so adding the video board, that this is just a rendering of what it would look like. The center scoreboard, which the facility will have, is the base bid on the left-hand side. And if we were going to add a video component to that, which would add the $125,000, but it would put video capabilities to the top of the scoreboard.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Soto.
Dr. Nosa, before you play that video, go back to the slide before.
To the
That one. And,
I'm trying to.
and so to correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Nosa, is we're going to stub out, if the board chooses not to put a video board on the wall right now, we will have the score clock on the left, which is part of the base, which is part of the price right now. We can always come back without having all these hands in it and put our own video board to tie into the rough in that's already been priced.
Yes, sir,
Correct.
that's exactly right. Yeah, so what the understanding that we have with the architect and the contractor, so the contractor was approved a couple of board meetings ago, is just exactly like Mr. Soto said. So even if the board chose to stay with the non-video board, we're going to put the electrical rough in and all the infrastructure in to come back and add that component. And it wouldn't be any added cost because the infrastructure, the electrical and the power source would all be running, the conduits and everything would already be in place for it. And that would be the case for this, the wall mounted one, and then also the center scoreboard.
I can see the wall mounted, Dr. Nosa, but I just can't see it happening to the center one. How they retrofit that scoreboard on the left to put that video on the right. I
Right.
mean,
They would rough in all the electrical, sir, but they would have to come in and replace the scoreboard. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
Because the scoreboard it's a different size,
Yeah.
but the electrical capabilities for it would be there.
and Mr. Chair, just we discussed about advertisement, right? We're trying to bring some revenue in. With the video board in the center, I think we can publicize all the great programs that we do, kind of like at our stadium. And we can also sell some advertisements in the center one, and we can always come back for the wall ones if that's something that you guys are looking to do. But
And then also, sir, if I can add to the one thing, the way we do similar to the stadium where we involve the schools programs and they run the video boards, they do the programming. That was the discussion we've had with this as well. So if the video board was something that was going to be added, we would also incorporate our students to be able to facilitate that educational component for them so they could run these video boards similar to what they do at the stadium. So those are any other questions on those first 4 before we go to?
Surtees?
I just, I didn't see how you would be able to, I understand about the electrical and doing all of that, but we would have to buy a different scoreboard, right? If it's the wall unit to include the video, is that correct?
That's
Okay.
correct. So it would not look similar to that. The rendering that you see with the video would be if it was decided to go to that right now, that's what it would look like. If it was something that would be roughed in, kind of like you said, Ms. Ortiz and Mr. Soto, it wouldn't look like that. Just all the rough-in would be in place for it.
And so if we were to go with the wall, would we only get one? We'd only get one. I mean, even our gyms right now have 2 scoreboards.
Right. So currently, the way the seating of the schematic design was, it was kind of a U shape. So if if it's in a U, the mounted wall scoreboard would be opposite all the fans because we'd have that center scoreboard for the remaining fans. Mhm. Yes, ma'am.
Do you, sir?
So the last of the alternates was that video projection system that was discussed. And so this will be a video that'll play. It's about a minute.
Mr. Chair, and I hesitantly want to show this. It's kind of like when you walk into a house, right, realtors, and you have $250,000 in your pocket and you're walking into $1 million home. This is 787,000, but it was requested, so we will play it.
And so as Mr. Soto said, that's $737,000, but that's what we would get. We take things seriously at Harlandale as well. So, if I could jump to the screen one more time. So just the final slide or the final page of your handout is just the breakdown for the overall, again, with all the different base bids and our budget. So the approved estimated budget for construction was $18,999,000. And that included construction and soft costs with a contingency of $500,000 already built into it. So as you can see, any of those alternates that were approved, we're already kind of at the cap of the budget that we proposed for the construction of this facility. So really, if we were to, their decision was made to go to with any of the contingencies, we'd first have to go to the contingency. And so then that kind of like takes money away from if things are, kind of come up during construction. On the positive side is as we're evaluating some of those previously discussed projects that we still have with the tennis courts and the tracks and the fields, they are coming in a little bit lower than what we had estimated. So there would be a potential to have some funds available because that would finalize all of our projects. But just specifically looking at the budgeted amount that was approved, the approximate dollar amount, we're definitely at that ceiling already prior to the alternates.
Yes, Mr. Soto.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Resendez, as Dr. Olson noted, is there might be those other projects are probably gonna be coming under budget. The board approved 18 million, and if they approve some of these alternates, contractually, we can go 20% without having coming back to the board.
Yeah, I'd have to double check that percentage. I think it is 20%. I think that's correct. Yeah, you're just, because you're close to what the board approved. Yeah. And you're close to what you've spent. And it's not unusual, as you know, sometimes they come in under or above, so you have that wiggle room legally to get that done administratively. Yeah. And that, yeah. It's way less than 20,000 for sure. I mean, 20%. Yeah.
Do you have a question, Mrs.?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Everybody just hear me out, okay? What if we did bring your own chair and we did alternate 5 on the scoreboard? Standing room only. We had to budget in the scoreboard.
I know when we were discussing some of these pieces, and just to clarify, because I think it was misunderstood. We weren't looking to do what a four-time national champion does, but I'm not quite certain if other districts have that type of projections, floor, things like that. But I am intrigued by the video board, and I think that's something that Mr. Soto also captured my attention with. And ultimately, with me, it's my focus is, and I think that's the team's focus as well, is how do we create a revenue stream? And so if that's an opportunity that we can maximize, obviously not to the level of close to $1 million, but if it's something that's within the means of our project, I think that would be not only um, a great way to showcase our kids and our programs, but also create some sort of revenue stream for our district. So that's something to consider for sure. Mr. Soto, or did someone have something before?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, as you kind of notice, when we have graduations, the kids love seeing themselves projected, right? And so the parents even enjoy their children being projected. So I'm kind of following that vibe with our children being on a TV, though it's the video screen.
Sir, and if I can add one piece that Mr. Soto also brought up was that curriculum and instruction piece where we would have our students from the campuses run those similar to what they do at the stadium. So it also kind of, be kind of accentuate that educational piece as well.
Oh, I agree, and I think that's another piece that we were able to promote when we decided to pursue and finally go forward with that scoreboard at the stadium. So again, we're aligning it with student achievements and student outcomes, and that's ultimately where we'll be able to honor our students and our community's wishes as well if we pursue that. Are there any other comments, concerns, clarification on this, or an idea? Ms. Ortiz?
Yes, sir. Are there other school districts in Bear County that have the center video board
Not that I'm aware of.
or
I'd
the
have to-
wall video
The
board?
wall video, not, SAISD has a component about it. The center, I believe, maybe SAISD might. Yeah, come on.
And so would the opportunity be available for us to rent out for sectional, regionals, state finals, or?
Yes, basketball, sorry, basketball playoffs. We'd also be able to host basketball playoffs, volleyball playoffs. I know Northside currently is the host for the regional tournament and they don't want it. So that's something that I've already kind of put in their ear. Like once our gym gets built, I would be more than glad to host that for our for our district to host that.
And be a place, a neutral site for out of towns or, for Corpus to come meet Austin or something like
Correct.
that?
As we saw, like with the stadium, before our season even started, we got calls from, to host the Holy Bowl, right? And so I've already received some calls for football playoff games. So bringing this arena to our community and it being a neutral site between like the San Antonio and Laredo schools, it'll be a big plus for our community.
And can I go back because I wasn't able to hear you? So there are school districts that have a wall video board or something similar, or the center video board?
Yeah, so right now, Southwest ISD this year put all new video boards in all their campuses, right? So they do have video boards in their gym. SAISD has the Jumbotron in the middle, but it doesn't have video. Yeah, just scores. Northside as well. No, Northside has the wall videos, but not on the Jumbotron, it doesn't have video. No, it does have Jumbotron on the video, sorry.
Thank you.
Ms. Cavazos?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just as a reminder, Mr. Soto, to myself and the community out there, the purpose of us asking them to vote yes on this bond was for all the things that this district is doing for student success, for the community to engage, for there to be a district family student engagement and place for us to do our events. However, one of the things that we most want to do is host UIL events. We always go and pay. We pay, the district pays when our students go to a UIL event, competition, whatever it is. And this multi-purpose arena, the reason it's called multi-purpose is because now we want people to come and pay this district for them to hold those UIL events, correct?
Yes, ma'am, and also our robotics as well, and handicap. Remember, both of our gymnasiums, just yesterday at the game, we had a pretty good crowd on the McCollum side, but there's no where to sit them, sit some people that have handicap needs, ADA, they sit on the court. In Harlandale, they sit on the court. So this gymnasium is gonna really be accessible for them to just wheel in or be in crutches and be able to sit comfortably without being in the field of play.
Thank you, Mr. Soto.
So I think we have a general idea when it comes to what route, when it comes to a video board. What the floor, we have a suitable floor, because I know I don't think they'll be day to day, right? So it's a lot easier to handle versus the wear to tear that you have, like when you're practicing, you have PE, you have athletics, because those things, or just you have an issue where water warps the floor, so we shouldn't anticipate any of those major issues, right?
No, sir, that's exactly right. And then the other thing we're gonna, because as Mr. Soto mentioned, we have robotics, but we're also looking at hosting like some color guard events and some other events that are outside of the athletic scope. But there will be a protective covering that will go over the court even then to protect it even more so. But the base bid floor that was provided is a competitive UIL accessible allowable surface.
So then, Coach Martinez, based off of the information shared by Dr. Hinosa, are you comfortable with that being utilized, or is that something that brings some hesitation, trepidation for you, or are we?
Asking if I want the $50,000 floor for our kids. I mean, of course, the MVP floor is, top of the line, but since it's going to be utilized as a once a week thing for athletics anyway, or for one school and then once for the other high school. I mean, I know the $26,000 piece would suffice. However, I'll just add that at Northside they do have the top of the line floor, the new gym that was just built off of 1604 in Hausman. They do have the floor that's top of the line. If we want to have some comparison, when you play at SAISD, that floor is much different. It's like has a hollow sound to it. When the balls bounce, it bounces differently. When you're playing volleyball, it's a lot harder to land on. So there is a difference in the floor pieces. Yes.
Mr. Chair,
Sir.
I think that the good thing about Monday is we're gonna already have the piece on the estimated cost of 10 million, and we're not gonna be close to 10 million on the preliminary on what's coming on with the other projects. So we're gonna know more or less that the estimated cost for the other projects, which was the tennis courts, the tracks, we'll have that amount. We'll have it before this item. So maybe it can help us make a decision knowing that we allotted this money for these facilities. And as Mr. Luna kind of jokingly said, we're here to do what's best for our kids. And if the money is there and we estimated that money to be spent on these facilities, I err with the side that we should give them what they deserve. This place is going to be there for 30 years. And if we want to save 26,000 on the middle tier floor, for the floor to be there another 30 years, I mean, we're talking about pennies for 30 years. $50,000 floor, again, being there for 30 years. So just my 2 cents.
Any other comments, concerns, or clarification needed with this? And I guess with this, Mr. Resendez, just like Mr. Soto was mentioning, once we gather all the numbers and the details, then we are within our means to do so. We prefer to pursue some of these additional costs.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yes, sir. Mr.
Weren't we
Lewis.
saving, Mr. Soto, weren't we saving money on CTE program, building, was that how much we were saving?
Yes, great point, Mr. Luna. On that one, we saved, we have an estimated 20 million to go to the CTE building. We ended up spending, we're gonna spend about 5 million. So yes, we did save that 15 million, and that we were gonna put it right back to further projects to be named later by the board and the community and the steering committee. So yes, you're exactly right, Mr. Luna. There is a 15 million that has not been touched because of that CTE building.
Yes, so, I'm sorry, sir.
What was that, Dr.
The
Nelson?
gym wasn't initially part of that, the 20 million, like Mr. Soto said. So the 20 million that was allocated for the CTE, then that 15 million came back to the general projects that were part of the bond.
Any other comments, concerns, or clarification needed?
And I promise this is
Ms.
gonna be
Perkins?
my last question. If on Monday's meeting, if we could get the estimated years that we will get out of the tracks and the tennis courts. I'd like to find out, because I remember we've been having trouble with the tracks because it had the grain, and at the time that we built it, it was supposed to be middle of the road, if I'm not mistaken, and then it caused all kinds of problems. I just want to make sure that we've got we're paying good money for a good amount of years, and that I will be retired from the school board knowing that I voted for what the best we could offer our kids. Bottom line, that's what I want to vote for. The best we can offer our students. They deserve it. And whether it be that maybe with this new facility, we can start hosting the regional competition for the mariachis, because they always have to go to the valley. And so it would be nice that, not just for athletics, but for our extracurricular. And remember, and I've always said this, is that our extracurricular students are the ones that have to keep their grades up in order to participate in extracurricular. And I think that that's so important that they know that we're investing in them just as much as they're investing in the pride of their school, whatever it is that they do.
I guess so. Mr. Mancha?
Mr.
Yes, sir.
Chair, if I may, we also need to remember that if we do create these programs that are going to come in, bring in people from out of town, from other surrounding areas, we need to contact some of the businesses and let them know, so that'll be a way for them to promote themselves in our campuses, in our videotons, to be able to let them know that we got people coming from Corpus where they're going to have to eat, they're going to have to find a place to sleep. So, so we need to promote what we're doing, not only within ourselves or within our communities, but also within our business areas, because that'll be a big increase in their business. Especially, right after a game, they gotta eat something, they gotta have dinner. It's good to have snacks at the games, but it's not dinner.
All right, thank you, sir. I guess the last piece, maybe so we can all have a clear idea on how to proceed. So ultimately, is the goal of us with these bond projects, is it the cost savings to be utilized for other projects, or is it to maximize the output on the facilities that we produce for our kids? Because I guess that's a good question to consider. Mr. Soto?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I think as we always say, let's have the best value for the district, right? And for our children. And so if projects are coming under budget and we're able to move funding from one to another to supplement some of the nicer things that we can do, then why not, right?
Okay, I just wanted to understand that, because I mean, if we have all this money and we could only use it for something associated with the bond, then we're kind of we're losing it essentially, right? If we don't, or we're not able to attach it to anything. I don't know, Mr. Flotis, is that what happens?
Right, so we have to use it for the construction or renovation of existing buildings, so that's what it would be used to, only for bond products. the way it was passed in the language of, yeah.
All right, thank you. Well, I think that gives us a lot of understanding and clarification as necessary. And I appreciate Coach Martinez and Dr. Enosa in providing some guidance there as well. Any other comments, concerns, clarification? All right, well, thank you guys. Moving on to the last item, which is discussion of regarding revisions to the board operating procedures. Are there any particular items that the team wanted to review or be or for us to reconsider, or
Mr. Chair? May I?
Mr. Resendez?
Yes, so we have on the projection, and you're going to have on Monday, on page 11, there were two changes that we talked about, clarifying when board members want an item on the agenda. If you can scroll up to page 11, that'd be great. And you'll get this in your board book for approval on Monday. Page 11 talks about two board members may request, and then in writing or electronically. That's what y'all wanted to make sure. You know, if you request an item, well, how do we request it? And it didn't say. So now we're saying just put it in writing or electronically email. That was the one clarification. I guess, are we able to get to page 11? Oh. So page 11 on the bottom right corner of the document. I think that's you're right there. There we go. That's the change. That's pretty minor. In writing or, sorry about that. And you'll get it. And if on Monday, if now y'all think of, if you want to word it differently, but that's kind of the language we talked about. We could specify, you know, by email, we just put electronically. So I guess theoretically they could text it to the board president or the superintendent if y'all are comfortable with that, or if not, we could be specific and put email, but just something to think about. Keep it electronically. Okay. Okay. And then the next one, if you go 2 pages down, page 13.
So if we were to place something like a phone, would that be like an Open Meetings Act violation, or?
As long as we're not doing it to more than 3 board members,
okay.
it would not be. So like, that's a good question, and that's something to think about. So maybe we just keep it simple, and maybe email's more formal and it's actually there. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. So we have a better record of it as well. Yeah. So y'all want me to change it to just in writing, like they hand delivered in writing, or email instead of electronically?
I mean, I guess you could put like parentheses, email,
Okay.
something like that.
Okay. And then the next one, page 13.
Because I know sometimes technically the electronic could be like they scan something,
That's true.
and I guess that could be an email, I guess too,
Yeah.
but.
So be a little more specifics. That way we are clear with the practice. Because I guess at a board meeting, they could write it and hand it to you, or the superintendent, then we have something in writing, or email, then it's clear. Yeah. Okay. And then that's the next change. And this one, actually this is regarding, sometimes citizens come up with documents or pictures and they give them to y'all, and Patty and I are, and Patty, well, what do I do with these? So now we're saying we're going to put in the public comments in that notice if y'all want to approve this. This is what we talked about, that, you know, we'll tell the citizens if they want to come speak and they have something to hand out, that they give it to the secretary of the board. And actually her title is administrative assistant to the superintendent and board. We could put her, but I thought, well, I don't know if the community knows her as I don't know if that'll be more confusing, but the idea was it'll go to her and then we'll filter it through like we've done. So do y'all have any thoughts on that one?
Mr. Chair, I just have a question.
Sure.
Because in the past, not everything that has been given to Miss Patty makes it to the board members.
Okay.
So can we put some language in there
Mhm.
that'll say, and I don't know, legal will review, and something to the effect that you'll have to look at what it is first before it's even handed to us, if it can be handed to us. Because I know in the past, there's things that we're like, yeah, we can't see that because
yeah,
there might be a grievance or
Right.
whatever the situation is.
It might be
But
premature.
maybe we can put that so that people don't assume, well, I gave it to
Yeah.
the administrative assistant to the superintendent and the board. Why was it not given to the trustees?
Yes.
Just my 2 cents worth on that.
Yeah, we could add some language that it'll be reviewed to determine whether it should be distributed now or at a later time. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, Mr. Soto.
Mr. Chair, who's gonna make that Let's just say at this meeting right now, someone comes up and hands something to Ms. Patty. Who, who's gonna review that? The attorneys?
Yeah, I think that was the consensus was to have Mr. Resendez or the
Okay.
attorney review it.
I think, yeah, the practice has been, Patty and I look at it and then we talk to Mr. Soto and then okay, yeah, this is fine. And then there have been times, I can't remember the last one, but okay, like if a grievance, and then sometimes Mr. Soto will know more about the situation than we will. And so we could put, in consultation, with the administrative assistant superintendent in consultation with council. That might be a good way.
I just,
Yeah.
and I
Mr.
know
Soto,
this
are
is
you
gonna,
comfortable with that? Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I know this is gonna sound terrible. I just want the community to know it is not up to the individual that you're handing those documents that will determine
Oh.
whether we will see those documents then, after, or ever. I just want there to be that there is a process of you hand those documents to Ms. Patty or whoever the administrative assistant would be at the time.
Mhm.
And then there's a process before it can even get to us. Am
Okay.
I making any sense? Kind of, sort of? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, I'll work on some language. I mean, if everybody's comfortable with that kind of clarification. Okay, so we'll work on that and tighten that up. Mr. Soto, any more thoughts on that? Because that is a good question. Okay, all right.
Jamacha?
Mr. Chair, can we also put it in writing where they sign in? Because a lot of times those people that are signing in are the ones that are gonna give us something.
Yes,
So
sir.
when they sign in, can it be in bold letters? So they understand that if you have anything, any packages coming in or anything like that, that please hand it over. Just because I know most of them will be the ones that are signing in to speak. So they want us to get something right before they come up and speak.
Yes, so we could add it to that. And then we also talked about, on the agenda, how we talk about, maybe putting something in there as well. But without, if this passes, then it'll be up to y'all to where you want to put it, for sure. Yes, yes, sir. So, Mr. Chair, those were the only two main ones. There was one other discussion about, Mr. Mancha had mentioned, the board operating procedures when the new board members come in, that it's part of the orientation. And I thought Mr. Soto already does that. I couldn't remember. I think he does.
Yeah, there
so
is a practice
to include that in the
review.
new board member
Yeah.
orientation. So I don't know, if we didn't talk about putting it anywhere in specifically, but it was discussed, and then I know Mr. Soto said he mentioned it. So I don't know if that y'all wanted to add that anywhere, or just since the practice exists, then leave it like that. Okay,
with the practice in place.
okay. So other than that, those were the only little adjustments that the board that we talked about.
All right, any other things to consider from the team, or are we okay with the revisions that Mr.
Oh, I forgot.
Mr. Resendez?
Mr. Chair, one more.
Yes, sir.
We updated, Ms. Salazar's name is now on there for her signature to make sure that it's included. So that's on there as well.
All right. Any other revisions to consider or things up for discussion? All right. Well, I guess between the time of Monday, we still have people that can bring up some items to reconsider as well.
Absolutely. Just let me know, sir.
All right. So if there's no comments, concerns, or clarification, then we can proceed to the next piece.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Ortiz.
Mr. Chair, before we adjourn, last night was a volleyball game with a lot of recognitions. And so I'd like to give a shout out to sophomore McCullum High School sophomore Ariana Sanchez for getting 500 career digs. I'd like to also give a shout out to McCullum High School Layla Sanchez, who had 1,000 digs. And last but not least, our very own McCullum varsity volleyball coach, Vieira, for reaching her 150th career win.
All right, great achievements by all. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, ma'am. Anything further that anyone would like to add?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I move we adjourn.
Oh, we have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Mr. Chair, I'll second.
We have a second by Ms. Reese. Any comments, concerns, or clarification needed on this piece? I hope not. We can proceed forward for the vote. Everyone is present. We can close the vote. All right, motion passes. Now 8:31. We are adjourned. Thank you everyone for joining us.